I always knew I was the spare, the extra piece in family portraits, the one who held the camera so the golden girl could shine. But I never thought it would go this far. Until the wedding invitation that never came, or rather, the one that came to everyone else. It was a Tuesday when I first saw the photos on Instagram. My sister Alina, radiant in lace and satin, locked in a cinematic embrace with her husband on the lawn of some country estate. My cousin tagged me in a comment with a thoughtless, "Wish you were here." My stomach dropped. I zoomed in. It was Alina's wedding. I wasn't just not there. I hadn't even known it was happening. I stared blankly at the screen as the algorithm served me more. White florals, champagne toasts, bridesmaids I'd grown up with, our parents beaming like royalty, and me. Nowhere. I blinked and checked our family group chat. Surely some mistake. But the messages were filled with congratulations, updates, and one crushing sentence from my mother. It was for the best. We didn't want drama. Drama. I was the drama. I sat frozen for hours, not crying, just unraveling, thread by thread, memory by memory. I remembered the time I stayed up all night, helping Alina finish her college applications, the time I skipped my birthday, so she could have a bigger sweet 16. How I gave her my favorite earrings when she cried before prom. How I stayed silent during fights to keep the peace. How I held our family together when our father lost his job. And yet, I wasn't good enough to stand by her on the most important day of her life. I called my mother. She picked up with hesitation. "Mira, I know you're upset, but this was Alina's day, so why wasn't I part of it?" There was a pause. Alina felt, "You might make it about you. You two haven't always gotten along." "We haven't gotten along," I said, voice cracking, "because you always took her side even when she hurt me." "I'm sorry you feel that way," she replied, like a dagger wrapped in politeness. I hung up. The next few days were a blur of silence. Friends didn't know what to say. Some sent awkward messages like, "I thought you were coming." Others didn't reach out at all. I scrolled, watched, and wilted. My grief wasn't just about missing a wedding. It was the death of a delusion. That maybe someday I'd be seen, included, loved as I am. For a moment, I considered disappearing, leaving social media, changing my number, flying somewhere, and starting over. Then a strange thought came to me. What if I did exactly that? Not out of spite, not to prove anything, but to give myself the celebration I'd been denied. I opened my laptop and typed without thinking. Solo trip ideas in Italy. The images that came up made my chest ache. Amalfi Cliffs, warm terracotta towns, villas drowning in bougainvillea. I didn't know why, but it felt like somewhere I could breathe again. I clicked book before I could second guess. No one was going to invite me into their fairytale, so I decided to make my own. Italy greeted me like a long, lost lover, arms wide open, no questions asked. I landed in Naples with one suitcase, no plan, and a heart that still ached every time I opened Instagram. I turned off notifications, unfollowed my sister, blocked my mother's number. I wasn't running. I was reclaiming. Every tear, every ounce of heartbreak would now be converted into beauty. I rented a modest villa tucked into the hills of Positano. Nothing grand, but it overlooked the sea, and each morning I woke to the sound of waves crashing like applause for simply being alive. On the third day, I unpacked the dress. It was ivory silk with lace trailing along the hem, a dress I'd bought impulsively 3 years ago during a flash sale, telling myself someday I'll wear this when I fall in love. It hung in my closet all that time, untouched, a symbol of not yet, of waiting. Now I decided I wouldn't wait anymore. I found a local photographer named Chiara through a travel forum. Her Instagram was filled with dreamy shots of strangers who looked like movie stars. I messaged her, awkwardly explaining, "It's not a wedding. It's not an engagement. It's just for me." She replied instantly, "That's the best kind of shoot." We spent an entire day roaming the coastline, capturing moments that weren't about a man, or a ring, or anyone's approval. I danced barefoot on mosaic tiles, sat on stone steps with a gelato in hand, laughing as it melted onto my dress. Rode on the back of a stranger's Vespa, Chiara's cousin, apparently, my arms flung wide like wings. "You look like a woman in love," Chiara said at one point, adjusting her lens. I am, I replied, with my life. That night, I sat on the terrace with a glass of wine, scrolling through the photos on Chiara's camera. They were magic, raw, ethereal, a version of myself I hadn't seen in years, or maybe ever. I posted a carousel of them to Instagram, captioning it simply, "Uninvited to my sister's wedding," so I staged my own fairytale in Italy. Sparkles, I meant it playfully, a wink to myself, a little act of rebellion, but the internet didn't take it lightly. By morning, the post had exploded. Thousands of likes, comments from strangers all over the world. "This is the most empowering thing I've seen in months. You made heartbreak look like poetry. Thank you for reminding me I can be my own beginning." My inbox overflowed with messages, women, mostly. Some had been left out of weddings, others ghosted by friends, dismissed by families, forgotten by lovers. Somehow, my little rebellion had touched a nerve. One message stood out: "You didn't just go viral. You went visible." That line broke me. Because it was true, for the first time I felt seen, not for what I could give, not as someone's daughter or someone's sister, just as Mira. That evening, I returned to the same cafe I'd visited on my first night. It was small and quiet, nestled on a cobbled corner with lemon trees growing wild over the patio. I ordered espresso and tiramisu, and tried to ignore the people staring at me, some probably recognizing me from the viral post. And then he walked in. He was tall, browned with ink on his forearm, and a smile that didn't ask for anything, just offered something soft. His name was Luca, and he owned the cafe with his older brother. "You're the Fairytale girl, no?" he said with a charming accent. I laughed, embarrassed, apparently. We talked for hours about books, poetry, grief, silence. He asked nothing of me. Offered no advice, just listened. And when I told him the truth, not just the story, but the ache behind it, he said, "Maybe they didn't invite you because you were already becoming too much for that small story." I didn't know if it was the line or wisdom, but I took it. Over the next few days, we met often. Nothing fast, nothing loud. A stroll through markets, late. Night walks along the coast. He read me Pablo Neruda in broken English and wrote my name in his journal like it was a foreign word he wanted to remember. And through it all, I healed not because of Luca, but beside him. Italy gave me space. The world gave me attention. And I, finally, gave myself permission to live, to shine, to stop waiting for a day that never came. I wasn't just healing, I was evolving. I returned home to silence, no welcome back, no airport hugs. My mother didn't call, Elena didn't text, but their silence couldn't touch me anymore. I'd come back taller somehow. Calmer, as if I'd left behind not just miles, but versions of myself that no longer fit. I walked into my tiny apartment, now flooded with gifts from strangers, bookcase, handwritten letters, even a box of handmade earrings from a woman in France who wrote, "You reminded me how to love." Being alone, there were emails from podcast hosts, travel magazines, and even a boutique book publisher. One subject line read, "The Uninvited Woman, Let's Talk Book Deal." I laughed out loud. Elena's wedding photos had stopped being posted 2 weeks ago. The hashtag she created never caught on. I'd stopped checking, but one afternoon, curiosity nudged me. I typed in her name. There she was smiling stiffly in professional portraits, holding the hand of a man who looked more like a finance bro than a husband. The comments were polite, measured, no viral magic. Meanwhile, my post had crossed 2 million likes. My following had ballooned into the hundreds of thousands, and I didn't even try. I wasn't selling anything. I had just been real, raw, and unfiltered. That was my revenge, not bitterness, not public callouts or private confrontations. Visibility, joy, peace. I didn't need to scream to be heard. I just needed to stop apologizing for taking up space. A week later, my sister called. For the first time in almost 6 months, I almost didn't answer, but I was curious. "Hey," she said, her voice clipped, "so everyone's talking about you." I waited. "You made it into BuzzFeed," she added. "Even Aunt Rima saw it." "I know," I said. "They reached out for a quote." Pause. "I guess I should say congratulations," she said, the word bitter in her mouth. "You don't have to," I said kindly. "I didn't do it for that." "Well," she snapped, You did steal the attention from my wedding. Everyone's acting like you're some kind of hero. But let's not forget, Mira. You've always been good at playing the victim. I almost laughed. I didn't steal anything. I replied softly, I just stopped begging to be seen. That's different. She was quiet. Maybe because she knew it was true. Then the final blow. Unintentional but fatal. Mom's upset, she said. She says you embarrassed the family. I said gently, you're upset because I made something beautiful without you. She hung up. That night, I lit a candle and poured a glass of wine. The air was cool. My inbox was full of speaking invites, collaborations, even an offer to host a travel series on women reclaiming independence. But my favorite message came from Luca, still writing that fairy tale, because I'm ready for chapter 2 if you are. Weeks passed. I met with a publisher and started drafting a book titled Uninvited, a memoir in fragments, broken glass, stitched lace, olive trees, and Vespa wheels. A story not about revenge, but about becoming. I wrote in cafes, on train rides, by my window at dawn. The story, it turned out, had never been about a wedding, or a sister, or even a betrayal. It was about choosing myself in a world that taught me to wait my turn. To shrink to sacrifice, and choosing joy not to hurt anyone, but because I deserved it. Months later, I found myself back in Italy. Not hiding this time, but living. Luca met me at the station with sunflowers in one hand and a folded letter in the other. He didn't ask if I had forgiven my sister, or my mother, or the old version of myself that once begged for crumbs of love. He just smiled and said, "You look lighter." "I am," I said. We walked through narrow streets under golden skies. A girl across the plaza pointed at me, whispering to her friend. I smiled at her, not because she knew my name, but because I finally did.